Good day, all. This is Rob Cairns, CEO and Chief Creator of Amazing Ideas at StunningDigitalMarketing.com, the digital marketing agency to help you fulfill all your business needs. Today's podcast is with my good friend Vito Peleg. Vito is the founder of WP Feedback. Please keep in mind that this podcast interview was recorded before WordCamp Asia was canceled. So there are some references in the podcast to WordCamp Asia. I truly believe that the WordPress community did the right thing in canceling it, yet some of the semantics, which I'll get into on a later show, were not what they should have been. Without further ado, please enjoy the great conversation that Vito and I had. Thanks for joining us. Good day, everybody. Rob Cairns here. I'm with my good friend Vito Peleg. Now, if you don't know Vito, he is the founder of WP Feedback, and I thought we'd have a bit of a chat today. How are you today, Vito?
Hey, how you doing, Robert? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well, and you?
Great, great. Yeah, the day is almost over. Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a busy week. Yeah.
And Vito, for those who don't know, Vito's in London, so he's like 5 hours ahead of me. So his day's almost done.
Yeah.
Mine is still chugging along here. We were kind of talking offline a little bit about backgrounds and stuff. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background, where you've come from, and some interesting things about you, please?
Sure. So I actually got into the web design business while I was touring the world with a band that I used to play in. I used to sing for. And we're touring Europe, touring the world, releasing albums and all of that kind of stuff, which seemed kind of awesome from the outside, but basically we were still dead broke doing all of that. So just as a means of generating a little more income, I started building websites from the back of the van, stopping every time there's a McDonald's to steal some Wi-Fi and continue to the next venue. And then once the band kind of split up, I started looking into how can I grow this thing? How can I move on from being a freelancer to an agency? That was the transition that within the first year, I got to 6 figures in revenue here in the UK. And within year 3, we already had a team of 12 guys, some remote, some local, and some in-house, some remote. And through our activity with the agency, that's when we started realizing that there is a huge gap in terms of working with clients efficiently in our space, and especially when you're working with such technical elements or design elements like building a website. The client rarely has any idea what the hell is going on the other side. So that's where WP Feedback came about. We created a tool for ourselves initially to help us systemize our service delivery and the feedback process with clients. And it worked. So we decided to release it. That took off really, really fast. So we launched that 7 months ago. Within the first month, we broke a record in the WordPress space, being the first plugin by a new company to generate 6 figures in revenue in 30 days. And then from there, it just kept growing until we launched just the beginning of this week, just on Monday, which is the new WP Feedback. The feedback tool that we marketed until now, that is now WP Feedback Pro. And the network, which is what we call the new home for the WordPress community, that is what WP Feedback is now.
Yeah, and anybody who's in the WordPress community and design community needs to get over there and get involved in that community. I think it's a really good resource. Designers do tend to talk a lot, even though the WordPress community is a little different than a lot of other communities. We all talk online and we all have conversations like we're doing now,
Yes.
And we all share what we've done.
This is actually very rare, Robert, I think you came from a few other industries before going into this game as well. So you probably know, I bet it's the same in the IT game, that everything is very secretive and everyone is just keeping to themselves. And the opposite is true when it comes to WordPress. Everyone is so open and And I love that. I very much embraced it. And if someone wants to reach out to me and have a little talk, I'm always willing to find the time to do that. And it's been my same experience with some of the people that I look up to and that I want to speak to. Just sending a message on Facebook or finding that email for that contact, and everyone were very open to this. So this is the power of the WordPress community. And this is why I think that this is kind of like one of the reasons why we dove into creating something like this, to create a home for all of us, to actually take what we're already doing naturally, but take it to the next level.
Oh, I agree with you so much. I mean, the power of the community is incredible. I mean, where can you take your community? And I'll throw a guy out there who's a good friend who I've talked to many times over the years, a guy like a Bob Dunn, who's big into the WooCommerce space.
Yes.
And Bob and I have known each other online probably for over 10 years.
Nice.
And we have
He's also in there.
Yeah, and we have conversations every couple months, right? And and that's how this community grows. Take another person, our mutual friend Kim Doyle, and she's another one. And Kim and I have many conversations, and it's the same thing. And half the time, it's not even WordPress related conversations.
Yeah.
It's the agency struggles. It's the business discussion. It's the how's your family doing discussion, right?
Yeah, it's people to people. That's the beauty here. And yeah, like I want to try and nurture this even a lot more. I think that there could have been a lot more done by by the top players in the space, or by WordPress themselves, to help us create that kind of environment. But when I saw no one is doing it, and I saw that my team and I have the power to make it happen, to make it a reality, it just made complete sense, and it's free.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I think some more stuff could have been done at the top end. We've all questioned things that have happened at the top end with automatic and frankly Gutenberg and many things. And I'm not going to beat that discussion to death because it's been beaten to death for the last 12, 14 months. But that all said, I think what we need to do is keep building this community and not keep ripping it apart. And that's the important thing. So
I agree. And that's another thing that I kind of started recognizing in our space over the past kind of year or so, that there's kind of like some cliques that are forming and all this kind of stuff. And I wanted to bring back the common denominator, right? That's the term.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure that we all understand that we're in this together, or remind it to all of us that we're in this together, and it's not about competition, it's about all of us growing.
I would agree. I mean, I know you and I are both in numerous Facebook groups, and the one thing most of us do is we recognize we're all in this together, and we actually share information on a pretty regular basis, instead of saying, no, I won't help you, you're my competitor. I won't help you, you're my competitor. No, I think
it's just enough for everyone.
Yeah. I so agree with that. Let's move on to a topic I wanted to get to.
Sure.
And that was talking about scaling your business a little bit. And you talked about how your team is now 14. How did you get to the 14? We know recently you've hired a CTO who we both know very well, and we'll get there. And I wanted to talk about why now, and this whole, why did you scale your business the way you did?
Sure. So I think that I'm a facilitator, so as I kind of like look at what is my biggest strength is taking something and executing a vision. But in order for you to do that, you must have help. And it kind of comes back to that realization of community, or the power of groups, or of people working together. So to me, it was kind of a natural transition to go to that route. I don't think it's the right way for everyone. You know, if you feel that you're more of a technician and you enjoy doing the work, you know, you actually enjoy sitting on the tools and doing that kind of stuff, then I wouldn't mess with that. And, you know, I would say just like keep at it and increase pricing instead of increasing the team,
Yeah.
as you become more of a pro at what you do. But if you're more of a business owner, and then scaling up is like the natural progression that you would do. I even thinking, like, you know, again, if we're looking back into the music world, I've always had a band, you know, like since I was 14 years old, I was part of a band. I was always the leader of the band, but I was always I always had people around me that I kind of had to drive to do stuff. And with music, it's even harder because it's free. They never get paid for anything. So they need to travel the world, carry equipment, wake up in
Yeah.
the middle of the night, do all of this kind of stuff. And it's all for free. So that kind of taught me how to lead and how to become an efficient manager, uh, that I now apply to our startup here.
Yeah. And being a manager, I'm a PM or a project manager by trade is tough, and it's
Yeah.
not easy sometimes to be that facilitator and to make sure A is talking to B and all the pieces are in place. That's a skill in itself that most people don't realize, that are freelancers or work for themselves, and they don't always understand that managing's a skill and a tough skill. Don't you
Very
think?
true. Very true. And it's a skill that you improve over time, like like anything else, you know, like I've done a lot of mistakes with my early
Yeah.
employees, you know, that I just learned from, and tried to not repeat when I did the same process again. And I totally agree with what you're saying, is that because it's more about seeing the bigger picture and
Mhm.
how each element communicates or integrates to another within the business. So having this gradual look over things to see how it all interacts, to make sure that there are no breakage, that everything flows smoothly between the different aspects of the business. Yeah, I love doing that. Um, what usually happens as you start, because the natural progression is starting as a one-man show, one-man band, and then you start bringing more people on board and so on, and you remain in the center. So you
Yeah.
remain, like, everything just comes out. All of the communications are coming out of you. Like, you know, if you
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
like I imagine like a circle with arrows going out, you know, all around it.
Mhm.
Instead of you being the main circle that everything happens inside. So like things are moving from one place to another, but you're just overseeing the whole thing. So it's like you're looking at it from above instead of being the
Yeah.
core of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the hardest part there, unfortunately, when you go from being a one-man band to hiring people, is letting go sometimes.
Oh yeah.
It's, you know, I went through that in healthcare where I ran $1 million projects, and I'd have a team of often 5, 6, 7 people in IT working under me. And it's like, I know I can jump in and do that.
Yeah.
I know I can jump in and do that. And I know I can do it faster, but that's not your goal. When
True.
you become that facilitator, it's to facilitate your team to grow and do everything, instead of you jumping in and doing it all the time. And that's the
Exactly.
hardest thing I find for people that make that shift, is they're still micromanagers or micro doers, instead of saying, let me develop my team for the benefit of the business.
I totally agree. And what I try to do when this kind of challenge comes in front of me, I try to look at this is, okay, I can do the work right now, and it's going to take me whatever 30 minutes or
Yeah.
1 hour, or I can just let it go and go do something else that will leverage us by another hour instead of just doing it like that.
Yeah.
So this way, if you can do the work in an hour, but by not doing the work and delegating, you're actually accomplishing 5 hours worth of work instead of just one.
That is so true. And because also to switch into a task and switch out of the task
Yes.
isn't just the hour, it's the half hour before, the half hour after. So the
Yeah.
hour turns into 2 very quickly.
That's
And
true.
and we all get what I'm saying. And it's funny because we talked about that, and we were talking offline how I've just taken on a PM to do some of my stuff. And
Yeah.
one of the reasons I did, and I've shared this pretty publicly in a couple groups, is I have a goal to take a third of the year off this year.
Okay.
So the only way I can take a third of the year off and run the business is to have people to do the work for me.
Right.
So your goals, everybody's goals are different, but you have to work towards each goal.
Yeah, I think that this is a very smart move. You start with that. You start with the vision and the idea and the goals, and just choose the model that works for you.
Yeah. So one of the things you did recently was you hired a CTO,
Yes.
and and the CTO, for those who don't know, is Jan Koch, and Jan's out of Germany, and I know Jan very well. Jan's been on with me. We've had many conversations. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and how did that play out? Do you mind
Right.
sharing that?
Yeah, of course. So I met Jan in Berlin in WordCamp actually last year, and I was just before the launch, but we were literally on the first couple of weeks of what was going on with WP Feedback. I went there to talk about what we want to do, do on that event, and that's where we kind of like got together, and we kind of clicked. And I think that this is the first thing that should happen, especially, I'm not talking about if you're gonna bring one support guy out of 10 people. It doesn't really matter if you have a good personal rapport with that guy. It would help, but it's not gonna be essential. But when you're bringing key positions into the company, communication, flow of communication, and the ability to openly talk about things is super important. And to do that, you must have a high quality rapport between the two individuals. So that was the first thing out of the way, because we just got along really well at the beginning. But the main reason was that I saw completing traits in his personality that I don't have, and he saw the same thing in what I have that he doesn't. And that's kind of like what drove this home, basically, because I started as a web designer. I'm more on the design side. So I see things like as an artist more when I look at a website sometimes. While Jan came into it from the development side of things. So we see things differently. Our perception of reality is completely different. More than that, Jan's kind of like approach to things is more detailed oriented. He likes to dive into things and explore them and, like, pull out whatever it can get out of them, which is awesome. And that's exactly what you need when a product starts to become more mature. I'm on the other side of the spectrum, so I just run. I run fast and as fast as I can, and sometimes I break things along the way, but I get to where I needed to go. So that's kind of that's been a lot of the approach so far. But as the company kind of stable, already have thousands and thousands of websites using our solution. Now it's time to dive deeper. And I think that this is exactly the right time to bring someone that will have the capacity to do that. Plus, as the team grows and as the customer base grows, my time gets fragmented. So I don't get to do more. I don't get to give the same amount of focus into what's going to be the next update. Most of my week this week was dealing with the lawyers and the privacy policies and the cookies policy.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but
yeah, but it's
it's true. I've had
funny.
weeks
It's
like
that.
that. Yeah.
So having someone that will sit on that will kind of work a lot better. Then even more, it's just like a match made in heaven, this thing, because Jan did the WordPress agency summit last year.
It was very good, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge success, in terms of attendees, in terms of the people that he got on board to speak, in terms of the sponsors, in terms of the media coverage for this thing. He created something awesome. So we kind of also connected on the fact that we were both, I don't know, quote unquote, kind of rising stars in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And we could see a huge value add or even like a very tight synergy with the summit that he's doing and with the network that we just released. So all of the upcoming summits, instead of people needing to log into yet another platform to consume that videos, is just going to be part of WP feedback. So again, it still works with our mission of breaking down communication breakdowns and bringing it all home.
Yeah, and the other thing I should mention that you mentioned right off the top on this discussion is you and Yan met at WordCamp Berlin.
Oh yeah.
And what is really important out of that, and there's a lot of talk, a lot of designers and developers, they don't get out and network, they don't get to WordCamps, they don't get to local events. Lately, I've been doing a lot of local Toronto events that are different. So not so much WordPress events, but more business events. And it's the people you meet. And there are people that you meet and you say hello to and you hit it off like that. I've got a couple people have become very good personal friends that we met at networking events. And so what I'm trying to put out there is for listeners is get out to some local events. They don't necessarily have to be WordPress related. Find a business group, find a group for your library, find something on meetup.com. Get out and put yourself out there. The first couple of times is tough, but it gets easier.
That's very true, and this is a kind of a practice that I had to put myself into when we started launching this thing. But I did this in the agency, not necessarily going to WordPress related meetup back then, but more stuff that were around our target audience at the time. And even going back to the music thing, once you play the show, you got to go out and hang out with the fans. That's where the real relationship building process happens. That's where they're gonna really buy the album and keep it for years to come. So nurturing these relationships is super important. And this is another thing that I'm gonna we're going to encourage through the platform, because as people sign up, we ask them where they're from, like a city and a country, and then we can recommend related events in our space when they come. Because we found is that the biggest reason, and I was talking to a lot of WordPress meetup organizers and WordCamp organizers, their biggest challenge is getting the word out there and making sure that people in Toronto.
No question.
So hopefully that will solve that problem from that end as well.
Yeah. And what people need to remember, you talk about nurturing relationships, and I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record on this one, but I attribute it to marketing's like dating. You don't, it doesn't kind of happen right away. It takes time to build that relationship, and the more important relationship, the longer it takes. And I think people need to realize that. And so is networking. I mean, it takes time, and it takes time to build trust level.
I felt like the impact of it between the two big WordCamps. So I went to Berlin last year, being like a complete unknown in the space, and just walking around with I had my little booklets that I was handing down, and I was just, I got rid of 500 of these, trying to speak to every person that I saw over there. Hi, look at to check out what I'm doing. I was doing outreach basically. But then when I came to St. Louis in November, that was
US.
Yes, to WordCamp US. I saw the same people, but the approach was completely different. Now we're equal. We're it's not me trying to talk to them, it's us talking as friends. And you see the kind of people that I would imagine myself being nervous speaking to now, because of the traction that we got in the thing, and because I was adamant about the fact that I want to build a relationship. So people that I didn't get the chance to meet yet, I saw that they were kind of looking up and with those big eyes, trying to get something from me, and I was in exactly the same position 6 months before that. So it's just really interesting to see the two approaches and how impactful networking and building relationship really is.
Yeah, it's relationships. I hear you. Last year, we didn't have a WordCamp Toronto. They put it on hiatus for a year. The year before I went, it's usually a one day. And I think I spent the whole morning in the break room catching up
Right.
with people on relationships. And it's not that the speakers weren't good. It's just I I know a lot of people in the Toronto space, and it was a time to catch up. And before
Yeah.
I knew it, 1 o'clock had rolled around, and I think I had sat through half a talk. And I think that's the real value of work camps is the
Yeah.
networking, not the talks. See, we can get the talks online.
Yes.
It's the seeing the people, it's the getting together, it's the sharing,
Yeah,
that.
and
It's
you learn so much just by being in the company of people that already walked the same steps that you want to
Yeah.
walk. And like I remember I was sitting with Robbie from Beaver Builder, and he was
Oh
telling me
yes.
about their company and how they built it up, how they also started as an agency and went into kind of like this kind of stuff. And he even started as a freelancer before that. And Justin came even from the music business before that. So we found a lot of kind of like a common ground there, which was very inspiring for me, starting a brand new company in the space and being able to talk to a person that started a product that we were using on a literally hourly basis for a long time. And he was so open about this, and you just get to get a glimpse into people that are like 4 or 5 years ahead of your business goals, not necessarily ahead of you, but ahead of your business goals of where you want to get to, and just learn and listen and learn. It's incredible.
You always learn. I mean, before we got offline, we were talking about people we knew, and and I've mentioned him in this podcast. One of the guys I talked to quite a bit is Bob Dunn,
Yes.
and as I've gone through the podcast journey over the years and done stuff, I've bounced stuff off Bob all the time and said,
Right.
"What do you think about this?" And he'll say, "I don't know." But the point is, he's a great resource and a great friend, and that's the way we develop these relationships. It's so important. It's so important.
Yes, I agree.
Where is, now that you've had all this success, can you share where you're going in the future?
Sure. So, like last year was, like we were saying, it was very much insane. Like the growth and traction was not expected at this scale. On month 2, we already closed down the agency completely and started focusing just on a product, which I thought would take like about a year to get to that transition.
I remember that post actually.
Yeah. No more client work.
No more.
So that was the kind of that was a very humbling experience on its own. So when I was kind of looking into what happened, and I was recapping 2019 for myself and to see what we're gonna do in 2020, I found that there's 2 things. First of all, I want to continue the growth, but I want to do it bigger and faster this year.
Yeah.
So I needed to think of a mechanism that will allow me to accelerate this even further. Then another thing is trying to figure out what can I do with all of these amazing partners that helped me put this solution out there. People like Davinder, we're talking about Davinder, or even Bob that is inside that network, and people like David from PBF, and all of our friends that just believed in the solution that we tried to create, or that we created, and just volunteered to share this with their networks, all the way up to GoDaddy and Elementor, and we're talking Beaver Builder and stuff. So like companies that you would imagine it would take years to even reach out to. So what can I do to provide value back to all of these people so I can continue these relationships into 2020? And that's when I noticed that there was there's only 2 ways to go about it in our ecosystem, which is kind of interesting. It's either you do a free plugin or you create content. So Robert, even for you, for example, you decided to go the content route with this podcast. And you see there's very high quality blogs that are out there in our ecosystem, high quality podcasts, and then that's from the content marketing side. And from the product side, from the free offering, you see companies like Yoast and Elementor and WordFence that have built mega companies based on a free plugin. And that's
WordFence. They're another one.
Yes. Yeah. with Mark over there. So and that's the kind of level that I aspire to. So I look at these companies and I see, all right, to get to 4 million installs, which Elementor just reached last week, if I
Yep.
recall.
Yep.
To get to 4 million installs or 7 million or 9 million that some of these have. I think WordPress has 22 million lifetime downloads or something like that.
WordPress, oh yeah, it's huge. They were talking about that on a recent podcast before Christmas, and their community is blown, and they've had enough convert, me included, from a free version to a paid solution that drives their business, and they've done theirs very smartly. What they do is they actually give their free community updates, but not as frequent as they do the paid solution.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
And
so you upgrade if you're stressed about that security breach.
Well, especially on the firewall side, and
Right.
I just know that product I use a lot as an example because I talked about this recently. It kind of saved my hide a couple of times in the last 6 months with clients. So, you got to, but I agree with you. You got to decide which way you're going to go.
Yeah. When you're looking at what companies like that have done, and, to serve a solution that has a few million installs on it, takes a lot of resources, a lot of manpower. Even we can confidently say that it takes approximately 50 people to maintain a multi-million installs solution in our ecosystem. They do it because it's viable, and if you get to that point, you're good. So it's worth it. But I was thinking like, all right, if we're already going to get to that level at some point, might as well create something that will not be just another plugin out of 60,000 and will not be just another blog out there out of millions of articles in the space, very, very saturated on that front. I wanted, instead of creating like a little step for our ecosystem, to create like a huge leap forward with whatever mechanism we would build as our top of funnel, as our, like others have the free plugins or the content strategy. So that's what I noticed that people were doing online, and they were sharing our plugin inside social media groups, basically installing the plugin on their websites, turning on what we call guest mode, and sharing this in the Facebook group or a Slack channel, and getting peer-to-peer feedback. That's where the kind of concept came from. I just wanted to award this functionality to the community. And we kind of kept adding more and more stuff to it until we ended up with what is now Double Feedback, which is essentially, it's a social platform that is designed specifically for our ecosystem. And it still continues on that mission. It's just that it broadened. So this is actually another interesting thing to continue on what we said in the beginning. As you grow, your perception of your mission changes.
No question.
And a lot of people kind of resist that, when you're saying, no. I build websites, so that's what I do. I build websites, so that's all I do. But that's not the case. When you evolve, your vision broadens. So what I consider our mission from day one was, let's fix communications for WordPress professionals. That was that's the one-liner. That's our North Star, and everything we do, we check against this North Star. But the definition of what is a WordPress professional, that is a kind of that is open to interpretation. So when I was building this tool, to me, a WordPress professional was only freelancers and agencies. That was my reality, and that's how I saw it. But now, from where I stand, I consider myself a WordPress professional as a product maker, and I consider yourself, Robert, as a WordPress professional, as a publisher in the space. And I consider the hosting companies also WordPress professionals that are serving us. And course creators in our space, they're also WordPress professionals that help us grow within this ecosystem. So I try to look at this now from a broader point of view, and how can we serve each one of these functions in our space. That's what the network is all about.
I agree. And, it's funny, people do resist pivoting or changing where they're going. I mean, I know when I started doing websites, probably 12 years ago on the side, 10 years ago on my own. And then I've kind of transitioned into realizing I don't want to do just websites. I want to do more than that. So I've transitioned. And I think most big companies do evolve. I don't think
Yeah.
they stay the way, especially over 5 or 10 years. Your duration has been shorter up to now, but there's always evolution and people
Yes.
pivot all the time. I mean,
You look at Amazon, it's just like bookstore. That's
yeah,
what it is.
and Amazon's my go-to store for everything.
Yeah, it is. But that's the initial mission. The mission was to create efficiency in buying a book, but that terminology just changed from book to product. Everything else remained. So the way I see it, like Bezos's perspective was around solving the problem around books. That was his kind of like a reality at the time. But
Yeah.
the more he did it, he said, okay, I can do it with book, but I can also do it with a computer, and I can also do it with a baby stroller.
Yeah, and I
S-
can do it with IT services, and I
yes,
can do it with
yeah,
dog food, and I can do it with natural foods. I mean, they own Whole Foods in North America now,
true.
which does delivery. I mean, but it's the same process. It's
Yeah.
just branched out into different things.
So he kind of broadened the vision to
Yeah,
everything in the world eventually. But it took time, and it happened one step at a time, and we were all witness to the growth of that vision.
yeah,
But it's always about creating efficiency in delivering a product. That's the
and
kind of thing.
yeah, and that's one reason why Amazon has delivery centers all over the world. And
Yeah.
an interesting note, I don't know if you know this, they actually bought many of those delivery centers during economic downturns to
Right.
save money on real estate. And
That's
right
interesting.
now, Bezos running around the US buying derelict shopping malls that are dead.
Oh,
Yeah. So
that's
he's
interesting.
so he's actually taking advantage of the economic times to help the company.
Yeah.
He's a smart man.
There is
So
another, if we were, okay, well, I can talk about Bezos for hours, but there is like one kind of really strong principle that I adopted from the way that he kind of observes business as well, which is basically eating your clients' complications.
yes.
There is a really interesting story as to what he did with the first Kindle to actually make this a reality. And I keep going back to this story because we try to do the same thing with everything that we do. It's trying to break down the complications for the other side. Instead of trying to enforce rules on the other side, you want to consume the problems and make sure that they get a smooth experience. What they did with back then, he had the idea of, all right, I need to deliver books efficiently, right? That's the mission. How can I do? But there was still a problem that it took. If you wanted a book back then, even through Amazon, you would go to the website and you needed to order it, and then you waited until the book came. So you wait a few days. So you wanted to make it instant. That's where the kind of concept of the Kindle came about. So we reached out to all the publishers and told them, listen, guys, we're releasing this device, and it's going to basically carry our entire library into to allow people to just read on the spot. So can you please send me the transcript of the books? No one had it. No, none of the publishers had it because that's not the way that they were working back then. So and they were like, I don't know, it's gonna take time, and he didn't wait. He went on. He already had all the physical books. So the initial versions of the Kindle was he shipped hundreds and hundreds of thousands of books to centers that he set up in China with literally like warehouses and warehouses of copying machines.
Yeah.
People that are sitting there and scanning each one of the pages of hundreds of thousands of books. So he had the database himself. To create that initial kind of proof of concept. Then he needed to build the mechanism that will translate scanned paper into actual, code. So it's actually like a text, like dynamic text.
And he's even gone to the point with printed books. Like if you order, say, a printed book, he doesn't order it from the publisher. He has agreements from all the publishers to print it. And you'll
on the spot, on demand.
And that's why they're never out of stock of printed books.
Right.
And
Yeah, so exactly. So he solved the complications not only for us as end consumers, but for the publishers and for the authors and for the distributors and for the shipping companies. And he just goes on and breaks down breakdowns, and I love that.
yeah. And he also owns the world's biggest Audible store in Audible, the
Yes,
audiobook
that's
store,
true. I'm an avid member.
yeah. So I mean, he does a lot of things right. What he's done, and what you've done with your business is you've gone to your customer or potential customer and said, not here's what we have and it can do all these 10 things for you. That doesn't work anymore. What you've done is gone to your customer and said, this is why you need our product, and here's a list of reasons. And anybody who doesn't understand that concept should go read the Start With Why by Simon Sinek, or look
Very
up
good
his
book.
TED Talk online. The TED Talk is a much watch, and sort of understand that whole concept. Once you start doing that, which Bezos done, which you've done, which many people have done, then you become successful.
Yeah, you just listen. It's all about like just opening your ears, finding that real problem and figuring out a way that will solve it, but in a way that is collaborative with the market. You know, even with the first initial launch, before we actually built, we had our very scrappy MVP that we did for ourselves. But for the for clients, before we launched it as a product, we launched a survey. That's what got us this little book that I was talking about before. And we surveyed 600 WordPress professionals to see how they run their WordPress business, to see how we can fit ourselves in there instead of completely change and enforce rules on them. And we did the same thing here now with people. We opened for early access signups a couple of months ago, and we've been collecting surveys from hundreds and hundreds of WordPress individuals to see what do you need in a platform like that. And that's exactly what we built.
Yeah, and you keep building.
Yes.
Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't touched on or we're talking about?
No, just come join us. It's free and it's fun, and there's a happening going in there, and it's only going to grow. We launched it literally earlier this week. We already have more than 700 signups within just a few days, and it just keeps on growing like that, starting to build that momentum. So yeah, come on board and join the party.
And Vito, to kind of wrap up, how can people get a hold of you? How can people join the free community? And how
Sure.
can people purchase your product?
So just visit wpfeedback.co. And you will see, you can join for free, and you can also check out our premium, what we're talking about, the premium tool that allows you to communicate with clients efficiently. And yeah, so wpfeedback.co. If you want to reach out to me, join in and post a message on my profile. I will answer for sure.
Yeah, and I can attribute Vito and I have had chats. Vito's pretty approachable. So,
Yeah,
folks, you
I'm
got a
happy to be.
question, he'll be glad to get in touch with you. Thanks for joining me, Vito. Thanks, everybody. Have
Thanks
an
for having
amazing
me.
day.
Thank you for joining Vito and I for this great podcast. For more digital marketing information, please hop on over to StunningDigitalMarketing.com, the digital agency to help make your business soar. To follow me on Twitter, I'm at Rob Cairns. I can also be found on many other social media platforms. Have a great day, everybody. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed.